During the last UFC pay-per-view event, UFC 306, the Sphere Card, a reporter asked this question from Daniel Saluba.
Obviously, you got a few wins in a row, but the last Noche UFC didn't go your way. Does this feel like a second chance to kind of impress on a big night?
He asked him, Daniel losing the last year's UFC Noche fight, and does it feel like a second chance to create a big impression? But there was a problem, because Daniel never lost that fight. He won via submission.
I don't know what you're talking about because last Noche UFC I submit Yagos.
These types of incorrect and stupid questions are not a rare occurrence in MMA media. For example, the pay-per-view before this, UFC 305 with Rikus Duplessis versus Israel Adesanya, a reporter asked a question from Adesanya that was already asked by another media member a few minutes before.
You're not listening, are you? You're not. We've already answered that. We talked about that earlier on. Alright, that'll be the last one.
And this problem gets much worse when you understand even the questions that are correct are just outright boring, plain and simple. So simple that these MMA media members ask those questions every single pay-per-view or fight night. Oh hey, what do you think about Vegas? What do you think about the crowd? How did the training camp go? Can I call you a lock this weekend? It is the same boring all the questions over and over again during every single press conference. I have no problem if they ask the same question if they deliver good answers, but the answers are so predictable. Like, what do you think the fighter is going to say when you ask him how do you see the fight going on this weekend? Like, dude, he's obviously going to say he's going to be the winner. Why would somebody say, no dude, I'm going to lose? No. And this is something I wanted to talk for a really long time, and we are going to do exactly that. By the end of this video, we are going to fix this problem and also going to improve it further. There are 3 sections to this video. Section number 1, why does this happen? Section number 2, what can we do to fix this? Section number 3, how can we improve this further? Let's start with the number 1. Why? An answer to this is pretty simple. Most of these reporters are not MMA reporters, but reporters who happen to cover MMA. You can't just be a reporter or a journalist and go to MMA media conference. Either you need to be a part of an already established organization, MMA Fighting, MMA Junkie, Sportskeeda or any other sport reporting organizations, or just outright mainstream media outlets. Or you need to be an already established figure in the media space, like Oscar Willis and Kevin O'Reilly. And what most of these media outlets do is that they actually hire freelance journalists to go there and cover UFC MMA events. And most of these freelance journalists whose full-time job is not MMA but rather journalism, and MMA happens to be a part of their job role, so like they kind of know about it. These people go to the press conferences, and due to the fact they do not know extensively about the promotion or the sport, they ask the most basic questions or just outright incorrect ones. Most of these outlets actually cannot afford to have their very own journalists. They can't pay them full time, so they hire freelance guys. For example, like Full Send MMA, like they have their very own guy. But most of these outlets hire the available guy for that day and send him to the press conference. Like, look at this page. This is the UFC access page. Signing up for this page and getting your account accepted does not mean you get a pass to be in the press conferences. No, after you sign up and after your account gets confirmed, and then you can individually apply to each UFC event. Fans and wannabe reporters who love the sport and know the sport cannot really get into any of these conferences, because good luck trying to get a UFC media pass without already being part of a established media organization. And now we know why. Let's move on to what. What can we do to fix this? UFC need to quality control these press conferences. There's no reason why a certain media outlet should be granted a pass just because they're a well-established organization when the reporter they're sending is completely clueless. Just like the folks at UFC is paying attention to the outlet name, you guys should also pay attention to the reporter's name. And I think both the fighters and Dana White should sometimes just outright tell the reporter the question is stupid and explain to them why it's stupid. And when you realize that this guy has no idea about what MMA or the UFC is, just outright call him out. And I'm more than happy to have a little number of really high quality reporters who ask interesting questions rather than a bunch of them with only a couple of them being interesting. With this approach, the actually interesting reporters can ask many more questions because there's not many reporters, so take your time. And most importantly, there needs to be a cultural shift when it comes to media reporting, and that is where the third part comes in. How? How can we improve this further? Be honest with me and answer this question. Yes, you. Tell me the last time you ever read an article from one of these big MMA media outlets. MMA Junkie, MMA Fighting, I don't know, Bloody Elbow. And of course you didn't. And you are not being a casual, you're just being a normal human being who's up to date with the technology. There's no reason why anybody would read a news article about this question being answered by this fighter when I can just watch the video, or else I can actually see my favorite MMA YouTuber or MMA personality just talk about that topic, either as a YouTube video or a Twitter breakdown, Twitter video, or as a Substack article. Times are changing and these MMA media outlets are dying day by day. This is also one of the reasons why, as I mentioned previously, they cannot have full-time reporters going to these events because they can't afford to do that like they used to. Fun fact, some of these media outlets do not even cover the cost of these reporters. Yeah, some of these reporters in the press conferences have to pay for their own hotel, their food, and their own transportations. And they work for multiple media outlets at the same time, so somehow they can make a profit. This is a dying breed of news culture, and UFC is directly catering and bringing in people from that dying culture. But this is not a UFC unique problem. This is the same case in NBA, NHL, NFL, F1, even boxing. All of these sports only prioritize and give the opportunity for well-established media outlets. I understand it in some regards, right? Like, why would I just give a chance for a random fan to come to the press conference and ask a question when I know there's some sort of a quality control in the media outlets? Because, they're paying for someone. If you're getting paid to ask questions, you should be good at it. But the problem is, MMA is really unique. There are a lot of stories going into each fight. There's lots of context behind it. And rather than in NBA or NHL or NFL, it's not a team. It's an individual person whom you have to know details, and you need to know about at least some of them. So when you ask them questions, it means something. It may have something to do with the technique. It may have something to do with a certain striking hold they have in their game that the other fighter is great at exploiting. Or maybe it might have something to do with a cool backstory that some of us know. So why don't you go and ask it from the fighter himself? And that's why I think UFC, just as quality controlling these outlets, should give the chance for well-established MMA personalities to come to these press conferences and ask questions. There's plenty of people who are doing insane breakdowns on Twitter. Like, they are doing really specific combination breakdowns, and it's not even just one of them. There are multiple people like these, and they're gaining attraction and they have an audience. And hey, what about the YouTubers? I am a YouTuber, but I'm not that established. I have only 24 subscribers, so I have a long way to go. But there are plenty of massive MMA YouTubers that average about, I don't know, like 80,000 views per video, and they upload multiple videos per week, whereas an MMA media outlet like MMA Fighting averages about, I don't know, like 10,000 views. Give these personalities a chance to come to these press conferences and ask questions. They already bring their massive audience with them, and press conferences will be more exciting because these people know about the sport and they actually are willing to ask the hard questions. And sure, you can't ask anything from the fighters. You need to have certain boundaries. And just like the UFC folks have already spoken to the existing reporters about those boundaries, talk to the UFC personalities about those boundaries, and they're more than willing to not cross them so that they can come to the next press conferences. They already know at this current state, even if they applied, they would not get in. So why don't the folks at UFC reach out to them? Wait until you see an MMA personality pop out either on TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube and gain a massive following, and then invite them to a press conference. See what they can do. See what the interesting questions they can ask. And be the only and the pioneering sports organization to drive this change away from just it being media outlets to actually being personalities popular in that field. For example, after the Sean O'Malley versus Merab Dvalishvili press conference, if I was there as someone who loved the sport, who watched UFC every single event, there would have been a couple of questions I would have asked from Merab. Like, your best friend Aljamain Sterling is now in featherweight, and if he wins against Movsar Evloev, we could probably see him fighting for the title against Ilia Topuria. But Ilia Topuria is also your friend and also from the same country. So when Aljamain Sterling, your current best friend, fight Ilia Topuria, who's also a good friend of yours and from the same country, who do you think will win? See, that's an interesting moment. We can create some drama there, or we can actually see what Mirab thinks. Is it the guy from your country who's the champ, or your best friend from America? And that's a specific question that will draw out an emotion from Mirab Dvalishvili. But the reporters, without a fail, asked the same questions like, hey, how do you feel right now after being the champ? What do you think about the crowd? What do you think about your opponent's performance? You know, the same old stuff. And this is what I'm talking about. Rather than the plain incorrect or just boring questions, ask something that is specific, that draws out emotions from these fighters, and that simply creates a moment in the press conferences. I don't remember the last time I was even excited for a press conference because I know what I'm getting myself into. It's the same old things that I can, probably can see it as a Twitter post. Just like 1 or 2 tweets, because that's the only significant thing that happened during the press conference. Change this culture. Bring out MMA media personalities who know about the sport, who has extensive knowledge about these fighters, and who plainly are passionate about this. And teach them when and when not to cross the line, and not even teach them, just tell them not to ask certain questions, like the questions about fighter pay, which I know UFC is pretty hostile towards, and let them do their thing. I mean, even these already existing MMA reporters have asked questions like the fighter pay, where Dana White have shut down those immediately. So these guys who know the opportunity they are getting will always know when and when not to cross the lines. And I can guarantee you, if you could change this culture and bring MMA personalities who actually know about this sport to ask questions in the press conferences, more people will show up to watch the press conferences, and there will be big and more exciting moments out of these press conferences. And hey, maybe one day I will make it big on YouTube and UFC might send me a media pass. One day, obviously. Right now I have 24 subscribers, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking the video, because then YouTube pushes this video out for more people. And if you want to see my future videos, or maybe this is your second or third time watching my content, consider subscribing, so YouTube will recommend my future videos to you. Here's my video about the Sean vs Merab and the whole UFC 306 Sphere event, and I had some strong opinions on the production. So go ahead and watch that video, and I will see you soon in a couple of days.